Hey guys, it's Tori here again with Fox and Hazel, and I am back for my third art journal or mixed media calendar spread for March. So I'm really excited about this one. I decided to take a different path. Instead of doing acrylics, I decided to go down the watercolor route. So I didn't show this part because it was really tedious and boring, but the page, before I decided to use watercolors on it, I actually did a layer of gesso first. And this is because this paper is not watercolor paper, so it's not going to hold up to using watercolors on it. It'll be way too absorbent and it'll instantly soak up that paint. So I've coated it with gesso using a brayer instead of using brush strokes because I liked the texture that the brayer left behind. And then I sketched out the word March where I wanted it, and then I went over it with masking fluid and an old crappy paintbrush. And if you're going to use masking fluid, definitely use an old crappy paintbrush because it will ruin your paintbrush. And so I've just gone over my word here, so it will be protected. So I guess if you've never used masking fluid before, what it is like liquid rubber, I guess is the best way to describe it. What it is it's used to mask off areas of your paper where you don't want paint. So now that I've painted over my words, when I go to pull this off at the end, it will have like protected the page from my watercolor paints. It's really fun to use. Watercolor artists use it for like everything. It's super versatile too. I use it in all kinds of projects. And so here I've used it over my words. And so now what I'm using is, this is one of my favorite watercolor sets. And I just realized how terrible it looks. It's so beat up. It's the Kuretake Gansei Tambi watercolor set. I think this is the 36 color one. Well, maybe not. I think it is. Well, you can count them and find out. Anyways, and I have no idea what shades I'm using because I think it's all in Japanese inside if I remember correctly. But I'm using sort of a Prussian blue, I guess, and then like I guess this pink would be close to quinacridone magenta, would probably be the closest color I've used. And so all I'm doing is just painting around the page to try and get sort of like a nice flowy blend of colors. At the start of the video, you saw me use my little red spray bottle. What I like to do sometimes if I know I'm going to paint like a really big area like this, I'll prime the page with spraying it with some water first. Just so that I don't get any like hard lines when I start adding my paint in, and I'm not like rushing to try and get more water on the page with a dinky little paintbrush. I find that if I spray it first, then it sort of helps soften the edges while I'm trying to work my way across the page. And I'm trying to think what I was going to say. Oh, this is what I wanted to mention was if you've never painted with watercolors on top of gesso before, you can kind of see it in the corners where the paint is starting to dry ever so slightly. It will not blend. It will not blend like if you are painting on watercolor paper because none of the paint will be absorbed into the paper, much like watercolor paper would. What it will give you is this really cool sort of like water stained effect. You can kind of see there's rings already starting in different areas where the paint is drying. And I love it. Like it's one of my favorite looks. But just be prepared that if you use gesso on your page, it will not come out like that really soft, flowy kind of vibe that you get with watercolor paper. You will in some areas, but in really heavy pigmented areas and stuff, it will just look more like a water stain, which is a cool grungy look that I am totally into. So this video, I just realized that like half this video is just me painting watercolors. So you can see I'm just going back in different areas that I want like more color. I will say, if you can find a way, I should have done this, but I didn't, was either like tack down or like tape down my corners or something, because this paper will buckle a little. This is still heavier cardstock that I'm using in this calendar, but it did buckle. So I found myself with like a river in the middle of my page that just kept appearing because it would just all slowly run towards the center. You can try to counteract this with either like clipping down the corners of your pages or taping it down if you wanted to. Typically when you paint with watercolors, you stretch your paper first, which is you would soak it in water and then you would use like a hard board. I have like a hard MDF coated board that you sort of use this method of like laying all the paper down and then taping all the edges down, and then as the paper dries, it sucks in, and becomes really taut, and it just sort of like primes your paper so that when you do watercolor paintings, your paper doesn't buckle. This is like really traditional watercolor practice, and I do it on any like commissioned paintings I do, or ones I'm gonna frame and hang, but obviously this is a calendar, not a legit painting that I'm gonna hang on my, well, I am gonna hang it on my walls, just not in a frame, I guess, or I'm not selling it to anybody. So yeah, so that's why you'll find if your paper buckles, basically the heavier weight your paper is, the less buckling there will be, and your paper won't tear. If you were to try to do this on like copy paper, it would be a nightmare. So yeah, like I said, you could try to avoid the sort of pooling by trying to counteract that buckling that happens naturally. So I'm just taking this off to hit it with a heat gun because I am super duper impatient. And so you can see I kind of did end up with a bit of a river, I guess, down the one side of the page, which I was cool with. So you can either let it dry on its own, or you can dry it with a heat gun. I'm just super impatient. And if you let it dry on its own, it will dry a little bit differently. You won't get quite as many like hard edges. Part of the reason why I have that really distinct line kind of off to the side in the center, that channel, is because I use the heat gun. It just makes everything dry so fast that it pushes the paint around and ends up giving everything a little bit more of a hard edge to it. If you were to let that dry all on its own, it would dry a lot softer. But like I said, I'm super impatient, and I almost always use my heat gun for everything. So what I'm done now is I'm going in with a stencil, and I have this like super duper sped up. And this is a Stencil Girl stencil, actually. I believe it's by Jessica Sporn. It's her Herbs, or Herbs if you're fancy, stencil. And I'm just using a cosmetic sponge and white gesso to stencil these images on. It didn't show up quite as dark, or not dark, I guess, but like it didn't have as much contrast as I had hoped. I think if I was like really precise and did a couple of coats, it would have come up more white. But it was kind of hard to stencil it with the bottom of the stencil running into the coil at the bottom of the calendar page. So anyways, you can kind of see when I pull away, you really can't see the stencil on the right hand side of the page there very well, but that doesn't matter. We just decided to go with it. I went off and dried it with my heat gun, and now I've come back, and now I'm going to use my second favorite. Actually, it's kind of like a mix. Actually, it's tied between the two. This is like the very first, like more like quote unquote professional or like better watercolor palette I bought. I was using like the really cheap crappy ones from Michaels, and then this is a Sakura Koi field kit, so it's meant for traveling with. It actually has like a little palette that sits in those 4 holes. It has like little legs, and you pull it out so that you can paint while you're on the go. That's what the sponges are for. But I use it obviously all the time. And so this is actually a really good beginner's palette. Like if you're looking to sort of upgrade your watercolors beyond sort of the junky Michaels ones, then I would recommend using this, or like recommend this set as sort of your next step up. I really like it, and it's lasted me forever. I bought this 2 years ago, and as you can see, like the watercolors are hardly used. And so I just used, the shade I used was Payne's Gray, and I just did some marks all over the page. And then I've grabbed a blue Stabilo all pencil, and I've just done like a really quick like doodly border around the edge. And you have to be a little bit mindful of this. Like I have this sped up, but I actually kind of really tried to use like as little movement as possible to activate it, because it's on top of watercolor. So if you saturate it too much, it will move the watercolor underneath, which you don't want to do. I mean, unless you're into that, but I was trying to not do that. And so now I've decided using my favorite drawing pen. This is a Faber-Castell Pitt pen. It's a bullet nib. I think the size is 1.5. I think that's what it says on the cap. And I'm going back over those stencils. So this is what I had originally planned to do when I did those stencils, was that I wanted to draw over top of all the stencils, but I thought that the stencils would like have more of a strong background. I guess I was trying to get like I don't know how to explain, like a really graphic, like illustrated style, almost like I'd cut them out of a page and like plop them down, but it didn't really work out that way. But I still went ahead and did the illustrations anyway, because I still liked them and I thought it would still look good, and it kind of helps. They do kind of help a little bit, provide more contrast in the background, not a ton. So what I'm doing is I'm just freehanding this, because you probably won't realize, but as I moved further right across the page, it was really hard to see where I had stenciled because the page was already so light. And so what I've done is off to the left, I have the stencil laying out, and I just use that as my reference to try and get an idea of where I thought it was supposed to be, where the leaves and stems and everything were supposed to be. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it at this point. This is also a really good way that if you feel intimidated by drawing, I find that like I am a terrible drawer or drawing artist. I really am. Like I do lots of this style of drawing, these really like sketchy, wobbly drawings, because I'm not really very good at like technical drawing. Like, those Instagram artists who can draw someone's portrait and it's like amazing. That is not me. Not even close. I mean, I have a hard time with my kids like, Mom, can you draw a horse? I'm like, no, I cannot. I can draw you a good flower, but I cannot draw a horse. So if you're that kind of an artist, I really recommend you embrace that scribbliness. Like I feel like my drawing has gotten better to me, and I have felt more satisfaction with it when I sort of try to embrace that really loose, scribbly, almost hard to decipher what it is kind of drawing. And so if that's you, just lean into it hard and embrace it and go for it. And just practice as often as you can by just like literally sketching stuff for like a few minutes at a time and not really caring about the end result. And you'll see some improvement. And honestly, I think it will help you to realize that you don't have to be a super technical, like precise drawer in order to be a good drawer. Like that's a different kind of drawing. There's people who are amazing pencil drawing artists and, pastel artists and all the like, and kudos to them. I have mad respect. That is not me. And so I'm just embracing the really scribbly kind of loose illustrations that come easy to me and that I actually really like the look of. So it all works out in the end. And so what I'm trying to tell you guys inspiring things and also pay attention to what the heck I'm doing in this video. So what I did is I just went back with some more Payne's Gray around the March, like the words at the top, just to have them stand out a bit more. I was worried that once I pulled off that masking fluid that it wouldn't stand out. It would just blend into the background too much. So I made a point to sort of outlining all the letters loosely to try and have them have more of a defined edge. And now I'm just going in with some gesso and just painting in between some of the flowers. I don't know if I really need to do this step. I kind of did it. It was like, man, it's not really as, I don't know. It wasn't really as great looking as I expected. It's not like terrible. It's white paint, but it didn't really like make things pop like I thought. So I went ahead and grabbed myself some neon pink instead. And I am just painting in some of those negative spaces in between the drawings with the pink. This is, I think it's Pebeo Studio Acrylics in the fluorescent pink. It's like one of my favorite shades. I quite like it. You could also use, actually I realized that as I was like halfway through painting with this, I thought, I should just grab my gouache because I have some Holbein acrylic gouache in Opera Rose, and it's basically neon pink is what it is. And it probably would have flowed a little bit better. Although then again, it probably wouldn't have been as translucent. It probably would have been more like matte and like opaque, which I don't know if I really wanted. So you could use either, whatever you have on hand. And so, yeah, I'm just going around and I was like going to do like one half of each flower. And then I was like, oh, it looks weird. Like it looks awkward. And so I think I decided to sort of make it look as though that the drawings were like sitting on top of the pink paint. So it kind of made that sort of same, made them look like cutouts almost, because I didn't paint inside the flower or leaves or anything like that. I just painted around them. So yeah, I just working my way around the page. I wish there was something more interesting to say about this. But yeah, and you could do this or you could use a different color. I also thought neon yellow would have looked really cool. I went through this whole phase last year where I was using like neon and everything, and I kind of forgot about it for a while. And I just, in the last couple of weeks, I picked this up again and been like, yeah, like what? Maybe it's because it was winter and I thought, oh, it's like dark and cold out. I don't want to use bright colors, or I don't know. But anyways, if you are looking for something new to try, I suggest getting some neon colors. They're super fun. So now I'm just doing a good old paint splatter on the page because why not, right? And I think that's it. I think that's all I do. I think I go off and dry this. Yes, I do, because I can't wait for it to dry on its own. So if you guys hit me up in the comments if you guys are like avid heat gun users or not, because I'm always curious to find out. Oh, I zoomed in for this part. I thought you guys would enjoy this. So this is me peeling off the masking fluid. So what you can see here is that there are spots where the paint did bleed, underneath the masking fluid. It didn't totally work. I think the reason why is because I did it on top of gesso, and the gesso itself was not perfectly smooth. I used a brayer, so the texture of this is actually somewhat rough. It's not smooth. So I think if I had used like a paint scraper or a spatula or like something like that to smooth the paint out, the masking fluid would have had like a better adhesion to the page. That's usually like the make or break deal, is how well that masking fluid sticks to your page. I'm still happy with the end result. I'm okay with stuff looking a little bit messy. I'm not like a really precise artist, so I thought it kind of went with the really painterly kind of wobbly look of the whole page. And I'm just using this is a Tombow mono eraser. If you've ever used one, they're awesome. They're basically like a mechanical eraser, but the tip is like super tiny. It's like tiny compared to the other ones that you've ever used. And so yeah, I just erased my pencil lines that were inside my words. And I think that's it. That's all I did. This was kind of like, not like a super fast page, but it was an easy one. I feel like the watercolors did a lot of the work. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure you hit subscribe so that you always get notified when I have new videos coming out and the rest of this series. And if you are making one of these DIY calendars, I would love it if you share it with me. And you can find me on Instagram at Fox and Hazel. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.